Mathangani
has the trust of his team. Sounds like the makeup of his team is in a really good space, and I believe that's because of the culture he's curated down there.
For WKXX Live, these guys have you covered from preps to pros and everything in between. Now, let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase and Gerhard for WKXX Live.
Welcome in on a Friday afternoon, a football Friday, here on WKXX Live. Fox Sports 102.9. Chase Robinson, Gerhard Mathangani, as we are ready to roll on this Friday 1 hour edition of the show. As week 10 of the high school football season, we'll have Oaks Bluff and Sardis tonight to end the regular season, but to end the season for the Oaks Bluff Eagles. We have all kinds of great programming coming your way this afternoon. As, of course, we'll be with you till 3. From 3 to 5, you'll hear the press box. At 5 o'clock, the Lindy's College Football Report. 5:30, game night, the final game night episode of the season. And coming up at 6:30, Oaks Bluff High School football. And following the game, you'll have high school football scoreboard. So from now until midnight, it is all WKXX programming, local and regional sports programming. So looking forward to being with you for the next hour. And football season always flies by. But as we go into week 10 this year, Gerhard, you get a lot of rivalry games. You get a lot of games that you may not normally see. Teams getting ready for the playoffs, getting some pretty good competition in, getting ready for what they're going to see coming up next week in the state playoffs.
No doubt about it. I think a lot of coaches handle it differently because the AHSAA gives you 11 weeks to play 10 games. Some teams would like to choose to play 9 games. Sometimes the way that just the scheduling works out, you can't play a full 10. So some teams play 9, but it is really interesting to find out which teams schedule in what way. So a lot of times teams will put their rivalry games or maybe the games that they call them gate games where you get a good gate, games where you can get a good concession stand and make some good money from those games. You put that either in the beginning of the season, week 0 or week 1 or week 5, or sometimes you put them late in the season here in week 10. Some coaches elect to try to find a team that might make the playoffs. That way your last opponent is a team that will give you another test before the playoffs. And some teams elect to play a week 0, week 1 game, go 10 straight, and then have this week open. I'll go through a list of teams, some notable teams that aren't playing tonight, and they'll give themselves essentially another week's worth of rest before the playoffs next week. So with the 11 weeks to play 10 games, it gives a lot of flexibility to these coaches and athletic directors as to how they'll handle their schedule. Some teams will hit the field tonight. Some teams will not. Some teams will go and play a playoff team, and some teams will just play for pride as two teams that aren't going to the playoffs face off against one another. So it's a real versatility of the schedule here this week. Yeah, it is. And a couple of games last night involving local teams. It was Munford defeating Asheville 24-9, and then a comeback win for Pleasant Valley as they defeated Weaver 28-22. Weaver went out with the lead. Pleasant Valley came back and won that one. So a good win for the Raiders to end the season. Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, the comeback victory for them. They were down 14-0 in the ball game and ended up coming back and beating Weaver. And it's kind of been the story of Weaver's season so far. They lost in similar fashion to Donahoe the very first week of the season. But give a lot of credit to Pleasant Valley. They came in. They snapped a 3-game losing streak to these Bearcats. It's a nice inter-county rival. Both those teams playing for pride, and none of them are going to the playoffs. But a good taste in their mouth of the Raiders as they leave the season with a comeback victory over Weaver.
And some tune-up games, like you mentioned a minute ago. You got Cherokee County at Fort Payne tonight, which I think is a really good game. I think that'll be a good test for Cherokee County, playing a team like Fort Payne. Both go to the playoffs. But I think that should be a really good game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, you have two teams obviously going to the playoffs. It's a nice road trip for Cherokee County because in the playoffs, the way that the bracket is seeded, sometimes you don't know if you're making a 3-hour trip or making a 1-hour trip, maybe a 45-minute trip. It just depends on how things break in the playoffs. And so some teams actually do like to get a team that's far away. That way you have to bus one. That way, just in case in the third round, you have to bus one for 3 hours or whatever the case is. you're not foreign to it. It's something that you're used to because you've already done it. So this is obviously not a long charter bus kind of game for Cherokee County, but it is a nice little stretch for them to go up to Fort Payne, and good for Fort Payne as well to be able to have a team like Cherokee County come into their place, a team that's going to the playoffs as well.
Yeah, and also you got Etowah at Southside, a couple of Etowah County teams. Again, both going to the playoffs. Etowah's had a great season. Southside has had a great season as well. They'll be the 4th seed there in that region in 5A. But that should be a really competitive game, and a game probably a lot of points are going to be scored in this one.
Yeah, I would say a ton of points will be scored there in that matchup. I think that we saw Etowah last week or a couple of weeks ago go kind of toe for toe in their matchup. So we know that they can play defense, but at the same time, we know that they can, go toe to toe with another opponent. And this is one of those games we talked about it earlier where, I think Southside's main rival for the most part is maybe Hoax Bluff. I think Etowah, they have a lot of rivalries as well. But this game, I think, is important for both reasons. Both teams going to the postseason, as well as both teams, getting a nice little tune-up game against another team that's in the postseason there in Etowah County tonight.
And also you got, now it's been a long time since we've seen the Oxford Yellow Jackets play any other Calhoun County team. Yeah. So I think this is really cool. Jacksonville is playing at Lamar Field in Oxford tonight.
Yeah, you don't see this very often there at Oxford. It's been a long, long time. I think they kind of instituted kind of like a silent rule almost where they don't play in-county teams. And to see this open back up and hopefully this opens back up the doors for other teams that play Oxford. But I think it was a good scheduling spot for both Oxford and Jacksonville to be able to get this game on. I know Jacksonville had a hard time trying to find an opponent. I think Oxford did as well. So to be able to get this game on the schedule, I think is good for both. Clint Smith is a guy that we talked to last week. He's one of the guys that he said we will not see a team in round 1, 2, 3, 4, or if you make the state championship, that is like Oxford. And Oxford won't see maybe a quarterback that kind of plays like Jim Ogle plays. And so I think it's beneficial for both, even though these two teams are two classes apart.
Yeah, I think that's a really good to think about going into to this game. But I think it's cool there in Jacksonville at Oxford. Sylvania is making the trip to Fife. Sylvania's had a great season this year, finishing second in a tough 3A Region 6. Fife, though, you're at Fife. Anytime you go into that stadium or play that team, it's going to be a tough night.
Well, nobody is going to bring the kind of game, the kind of talent, the kind of consistency that Fife has in Sylvania's run to the playoffs. So Sylvania will go to the playoffs, and their opponent the week of round 1 of the playoffs won't be as good as their week 10 opponent. And so I think for Sylvania and for Fife, once again, it's another good game between two teams going to the playoffs. I think Fife will like to see some size and speed that Sylvania brings. And, of course, Sylvania will love to see the kind of consistent success that Fife brings.
Yeah, and also you've got Cedar Bluff at Donahoe. Now, this is an important game for Cedar Bluff. They have a chance still to get that number 4 seed in Region 7, and this is one of those games that if you win this one, it's going to definitely help your chances.
2-4. That is the record, the region record for the bottom teams there in that classification. There's 3 teams tied for that number. Meanwhile, Cedar Bluff is one of those teams. So if they get a win over Donahoe, they would get Donahoe's wins as far as the tiebreakers go if it comes back to that third tiebreaker. So a win over Donahoe would be huge for Cedar Bluff because it would at least give them a little bit extra momentum going into the postseason, and it would help them as far as the tiebreaker situation goes. So for the Tigers, this game is really big. Going on the road, it's a bit of a longer road trip to Anniston to play a team that's already marked into the playoffs. Donahoe is already a playoff-bound football team, but Cedar Bluff can really help their case with a win today, claiming that 4th and final spot.
And there's some intriguing top 10 matchups. I know last week we had a long list of top 10 matchups, especially in different regions, but several tonight. And it is Linden, who's the number 2 team in 1A, is at number 1 in 3A, Mars Hill. This should be a really good game tonight as Linden travels to Mars Hill.
Yeah, no, it's another one of those games. It's a longer road trip, and at the same time for both teams, you get an opponent that is top-notch in their classification. I think that Mars Hill Bible, when they scheduled this, no matter if it's 3A versus a 1A, Mars Hill Bible thought, hey, Linden is going to be a team that is going to be as athletic as any team we'll see in the Class 3A playoffs. And Mars Hill Bible's run to try to make another state championship in their short history. We'll start, I think, on a good note as they go into Class 3A playoffs with this game against Linden, who will chase a state championship in Class 1A.
Yeah, and also the number 4 team in 1A, Valley Head, is at Collinsville, who's in 2A. They're having a good year at 7-2. And then in 7A, number 2 Central Phoenix City is at number 9 Prattville.
Yeah, this is another great matchup there. I think both those matchups there for their respective opponents. I think Collinsville, to have a Valley Head team come in, it's very, very similar to the Mars Hill Linden situation. And then in Central Phoenix City taking on Prattville, 2 teams going to the Class 7A playoffs, but 2 teams obviously that I think that understand, hey, if we want to make it to that state championship round, we're going to have to play, some good competition. So I think for Prattville, they knew that they'll have to go through Central Phoenix City to win the South anyways. And for Central Phoenix City, they'll know they'll have to go through Prattville in order to do so. I think everybody thinks that it's going to be Central Phoenix City and Auburn and then Hoover and Thompson. But, pump your brakes. I think there's a lot of other teams with stuff to say about it. But before we exit out of the segment, I did want to talk about, it's interesting, the teams that are playing. We highlighted some of those teams that are playing.
Yeah.
Check out the list of teams that are not playing today. These are teams that, whether from a strategy standpoint or just the way the schedule broke for them, scheduling, being able to get those 10 games in, they don't have a game this week. So they'll get to at least rest up and get ready for the playoffs. In Class 7A, number 1 Hoover, number 3 Thompson, number 5 Hewitt-Trussville. In Class 6A, defending state champion and number 2 Clay Chalkville. In Class 5A, number 2 Leeds, number 5 Pleasant Grove, or number 3 Pleasant Grove, number 4 Ramsey, number 7 Arab. In Class 2A, number 6 BB Comer, number 7 Vincent. Class 1A, number 5 Milry, number 6 Spring Garden, number 9 Sweetwater, and number 10 Lochapoka. Wow. Those are all teams that are giving themselves an extra day of rest. Yeah. So we talked about the flexibility. Sometimes you see rivalry games, Etowah Southside. Sometimes you see tune-up games, like we saw with Jacksonville, Oxford, like we see with Cherokee County and Fort Payne. Sometimes you see games that are playing, for pride, a game that we saw last night, Pleasant Valley, Donahoe. Or sometimes you see teams that aren't playing at all. Yeah. So it's a wide array of things that you could do here in Week 10 or Week 11, however you want to qualify it. And we're seeing that wide array from all the teams that will be competing in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I know coaches will be out scouting tonight, getting ready for the first round of the playoffs. Next week, we will have Oaks Bluff and Sardis coming up for you tonight. 6:30 airtime, 7 o'clock kickoff. Again, Oaks Bluff and Sardis. We'll grab a break here. We'll come back, talk some college football on the other side. Stick around here on this Football Friday edition of WKXX Live.
Right now.
It's WKXX Live on a Football Friday. Chase and Gerhard here with you as we work our way through this Friday afternoon with you till 3 o'clock here on Fridays. Busy afternoon. We're going to be getting ready for some high school football. The press box will follow us from 3 to 5. You'll hear the Lindy's College Football Report at 5. Game night at 5:30. And Greg Watkins and myself will be along at 6:30 for Hoax Bluff High School football countdown to kickoff. But we got a lot of college football to get to. And we'll take a trip around the SEC this afternoon. We'll start at Auburn as Arkansas makes a trip to Auburn tomorrow, 11 a.m. on the SEC network. And this is a game, Gerhard, where Auburn's coming off the bye week. Had extended time to get healthy, get ready for this game, figure some things out. And, with it being at home, you had 5 straight home games. You went on the road for a few weeks. Now you're back in Jordan-Hare Stadium. I think things are falling in place for Auburn, maybe to have a good day tomorrow.
I think so too. I think that this is a Auburn team that found a little bit of life about themselves at the end of the Ole Miss game. And at the same time, they're matching up against the team where they've had some success. So there's some internal confidence that's already built into this Auburn football team. Not to mention, when we've said this, I don't want to belabor the point, but Arkansas is one of the worst teams defending the pass in the entire SEC and one of the worst teams in the nation as well. So it'll be interesting to see if Auburn continues to try to run the football, which is where they have success, or attack the weakness of the Razorbacks into this matchup. Now, we've seen when Robbie Ashford's been asked to throw the ball a whole lot, that's not his strong suit. But can they get him some efficient passes in the air game for them to be able to get themselves going? But on the other side, this is a really tough task for the Auburn defense as well. This Auburn defense allowing close to 400 yards per game. A lot of that is, of course, because they play some high-powered opponents, Georgia being one, Ole Miss being another one. And so that will throw the numbers off a little bit. But if Auburn can be a bend-don't-break defense and hold Arkansas to field goals, the yards might not matter as much. So even though, they might allow a lot of yards, they can save themselves by holding teams to field goals a lot like they did against Missouri.
Yeah, and you got KJ Jefferson and Arkansas coming into Auburn tomorrow. We'll break this game down more tomorrow morning on the College Kickoff Show. You can join us from 9 to 10 every Saturday morning to get you ready for your day of college football. The number 1 team in the country, Georgia, takes on Florida tomorrow in Jacksonville for the annual rivalry. And it's been such a, I guess you could say, a roller coaster of a year for Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, because they started off just at the highest point, beating Utah, and then it's been a wild ride for Florida this year. And Anthony Richardson has been a guy who we thought after that Utah game was going to be, the guy. We thought he was going to be the guy for Florida, Tim Tebow 2.0, but that has just not, it's not come to fruition. And it's kind of one of those things that you're like, well, which Anthony Richardson will we see? Will we see the one we saw against Utah or the one that we've seen just about every other week?
Yeah, it's been up and down, and Billy Napier has been a guy that he's done a good job with him overall. I just think that, everybody wanted to give him the Heisman Trophy after that Utah game, and I think that we've gotten to a point now where I think he settled into the expectations that he was probably supposed to have going into the year.
Yeah, and we'll see if he could do anything against Georgia. That'll be a tough defense to go battle against for Florida. But Billy Napier spoke this week on kind of Kirby Smart and what he's meant.
Yeah, both guys have known each other for a really long time. They have ties that you'll hear in the soundbite, but it's one of the things that I think that, a lot like the way Nick Saban is kind of like helped groom Kirby Smart, and you see the coaching tree. I'm not saying that Billy Napier comes from the Kirby Smart coaching tree whatsoever, but I am saying that, I like to see a lot of the ties in the SEC with the SEC coaches and the way that their teams kind of manifest themselves based on who they've been around. So Kirby Smart talked a little bit about Billy Napier at the beginning of the week, and then Billy Napier talked about his buddy Kirby towards the end of the week.
I wouldn't have been in Alabama if it weren't for Kirby. Part of our dads were high school coaches in Georgia. There was some familiarity there, and certainly his influence on that with Coach Saban. I mean, he had a lot to do with me being there. I'm always be thankful for that. But Kirby's a heck of a football coach, man. I mean, I think he you think about what he's done at Georgia. You know, I'm going back and evaluating kind of each year. Year 7, you know, what was year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for him like? He's done a fantastic job. You know, I told him that the first time I saw him at the SEC coaches meeting. Had just won the national championship, and it's pretty well documented all that goes into that, right? And so he's done it. He's a competitor, and certainly a ton of respect.
It's a lot of respect from the coaches there. And what you expect in a game like this, and I think that kind of adds something to the rivalry, having the coaches, respect each other and have worked together. And like you said, he probably wouldn't have had a job at Alabama if it wasn't for Kirby Smart.
Yeah, and he also, Billy Napier being the offensive guy, Kirby Smart being a defensive guy, both working under the Nick Saban umbrella, they had to rub shoulders a lot about, hey, and Kirby Smart was like, hey, what are some of the things that my defense does to give you trouble? What are some of the things that we could do better? Billy Napier on the other side, what are some of the things that my offensive schemes give you trouble? What are some of the things that we can work at, here? I think that they rub off each other really well. And then college football, it's multifold. You, number one, have to be a good schematic coach. You have to have a good scheme, good players. You have to recruit well as well. And then you have to have the motivation. That's what has made Nick Saban the best probably to ever do it, is because he can cultivate all three. I think Billy Napier's learning how to do that at the SEC level, but then being under the tutelage of Nick Saban and then having that peer-to-peer friendship there with Kirby Smart, I think will help accelerate him in his career. I know he's in the very early stages of his head coaching career, but that will only help to serve him as he moves forward.
Yeah, that's for sure. So Florida, Georgia tomorrow, that is 2:30 on CBS. Missouri at South Carolina is the 3 o'clock SEC network game. And South Carolina coming off a big win against the Aggies of Texas A&M. Missouri got a hard-fought win against Vanderbilt. And, for South Carolina, there's some hype. They got a win over Texas A&M. They got a win over Kentucky a couple of weeks ago. People are starting to believe in this South Carolina team, I think.
It's the two most dangerous little things that can happen, or one dangerous thing, but it's 2 digits. 25. That's what's by South Carolina's name. They're now ranked in the top 25. This is a team that not that long ago was winning less than 5 games a year. I think South Carolina's gotten to themselves to a point where they have now expectations on their football program. A lot different being the hunter than the hunted. And now they're being hunted by a team like Missouri. A team like Missouri is trying to be where South Carolina is. They're fighting for that reputation. They're fighting for that valor. They've been there before, obviously, not any of the guys that are on the team right now. But this is a dangerous game, I think, for South Carolina. Coming off that win against Texas A&M, they're now riding a 4-game winning streak. People are talking about South Carolina. So then now, with a target on their back, so to speak, with a team like Missouri coming in, can they get to a point where they now refocus? Now, I think for South Carolina, Shane Beamer is almost the perfect coach for them. Because for him and for them, the thing now is to play the mental game both ways. Don't say that it doesn't mean nothing, because it does. Saying it doesn't is just lip service nonsense. It does mean something, but you don't want to over buy into the hype. Yeah. There's a balance point in between those two that I think that Shane Beamer and his company are trying to work with and work through at the same time, doing it from an adult stage where he is north of 40 years old, trying to implement that same message to his 19, 20, 21-year-olds.
And obviously, we're excited about where we are, but the only ranking that matters is the end of the season, and we got a lot more in front of us. And we talked about it. We're writing the story still of this 2022 football team, and I would certainly hate for the high mark and the high point to be the last 2 weeks. We got to continue to get better, and that's what we're really focusing on right now, is getting better. I look at it more as it's just the next step, and credit the players and the people in this program to be, 2 years ago at this time, a 2-win team that being ranked in the top 25 was the furthest thing from anybody's mind, to now, less than 2 years later, to be ranked in the top 25, to me is just a sign that, and another statement that we're headed in the right direction, and a credit to the people in this program and how they've worked to get to this point as well.
There are some exciting times happening at South Carolina right now. They got Missouri tomorrow. Again, that is 3 o'clock on the SEC network. A game that a lot of folks are going to be tuned into, I believe, at 6 o'clock on ESPN, is Kentucky at Tennessee. We mentioned this on on the show yesterday that this is two teams that before the season, let's go back to July, SEC Media Day time, we were trying to figure out who that second best team in the East was.
Right.
And some folks were saying Kentucky, some were saying Tennessee. And, as Tennessee has had a great year this year, and obviously one of the best teams in the country, Kentucky kind of has a chance now to say, no, we're just as good as people thought we were going to be.
Yeah, I think a lot of the hype and a lot of the talk about who that second team would be in the East was based on the quarterbacks, Will Levis and Hendon Hooker. We both knew that the guys were talented, and Hendon Hooker had come from a really, really nice program. But now it was like, hey, it's now put up or shut up time. And Tennessee, to their credit, they've put up. They've done what they're supposed to do as a team that's vying for a championship, team that's vying for that second spot in the East. And maybe they just said, hey, leapfrog that second spot. Let's go straight to the top. Still a lot to be said between now and then. They'll be able to take care of that business next week. But the business this week, I think, is really, really ironic. The fact that the two teams that we thought would be at the top of this heap, biting at the nails of Georgia, are right now playing in this football game. I think a lot of people also snuck Florida in there as a quasi third team that could be that team there. We've seen them drop off a little bit. So now it's South Carolina and Kentucky and Tennessee. I think a lot of people would put Tennessee number one, obviously, Kentucky number two, South Carolina number three, as far as the teams chasing Georgia there in the East.
Yeah, for sure. And Mark Stoops spoke on just, his team, kind of the mindset going into this Tennessee game.
Yeah, he's basically, piggybacking off of his defensive coordinator. His D coordinator, Brad White, said, I can't really tell you how our guys will play in the game, but we know we'll not play scared. And that's one of the biggest things, going to Neyland Stadium and not playing scared. The veterans have been there before. The young guys are playing with confidence. And he talked about that aspect of it from the mental stage between his guys in the Wildcat Blue.
Our team has been that way. That doesn't mean we're perfect, as we all know. But yeah, they know they could go compete with anybody, and we just have to play. And we say that all the time, and it's not lip service. You understand that you better play very well when you're playing with a top 5 team. But it's really always about us and how we prepare and how we play. And when we fall short in that area, the first people we look at is look in the mirror and look at yourself and look at what you've done. So we try to head that off as best we can. And so our guys have competed well in tough environments, and we have to go do it again. It's been really good. They've been dialed in, have good practices. We obviously needed some time to get the legs rejuvenated and play as fast as we can against the team that plays exceptionally fast, both in their tempo and the way they run. So, I think the little bit of time off and getting their legs up underneath has helped.
Mark Stoops there is Kentucky getting ready to face Tennessee coming up tomorrow, 6 o'clock on ESPN. 6:30 on the SEC Network. You got Ole Miss at Texas A&M as the Aggies coming off a loss to South Carolina. Ole Miss as they're coming off just a tough loss to LSU. They were up and lost. Ole Miss, I think is the better team, but they're going into College Station. Kyle Field always is crazy at night. It's kind of setting up to be a good night for A&M, but you got to think that Ole Miss is the better team.
Yeah, I think so, and I think this line has been really interesting as well. How it's moved so far. Ole Miss now sitting at about a 2-point favorite there in the contest, in Texas A&M, as we talked about. They've played some really, really tough teams, really tough opponents. They've been a really strong football team overall, but there's just something about A&M, especially offensively, that we just haven't been able to kind of put our fingers around and really grasp as much as we should. So this one will be really interesting. I know we'll pick this game coming up tomorrow morning on the show, so we'll find out kind of where we sit. So a little bit of time to think about it, but I think both teams have some confidence going into it, but both teams really want to bounce back after what happened last week.
Yes, they do. And that, again, Ole Miss is Texas A&M on the SEC Network tomorrow night at 6:30. We'll grab a break here. More college football talk on the other side. One coach got a big contract extension today. We'll tell you who on the other side. WKXX Live on Fox Sports 102.9. Chase and Gerhard here with you till 3 o'clock today. And we've got some more college football to get to. Want to talk a little World Series as well. That begins tonight. But a coach has received a contract extension. Hugh Freeze has signed a big extension there at Liberty through 2030. So for the next 8 years. And he's going to receive just under $5 million a year, which that's big for a school Liberty size. Mm-hmm. They want Hugh Freeze to stay and lead their program.
I think this is so interesting for a multitude of reasons. Number one being, of course, he was going to be very attractive to Power 5 schools. And I find it really interesting that Pete Thamel of ESPN, in his write-up of the story, the very first school that was brought up in his story, with I think his third paragraph, was linked to jobs such as Auburn if it were to become available this year. Now, of course, Auburn is one of the Power 5 jobs, as is Arizona State, as is Georgia Tech, as is Wisconsin, and a few others that we expect to be open, Nebraska, and others that we expect to be open before the end of the year. This is also really interesting because he's being paid $5 million a year. This contract is fully guaranteed. This is like a baseball contract or a basketball contract in the NBA. It's fully guaranteed, meaning the next team will have to pay a lot of money to be able to buy him out. Now, Auburn, Power 5 schools can afford it. These TV deals have made it to where they can afford, the buyouts of these schools. However, it is really interesting that now is the time to do it. You're already seeing the leverage plays between the teams that want to keep their coach and the potential suitors for everybody else. Once again, it's not saying that Auburn can't or other teams, not saying Auburn, just other teams. I'm saying Auburn now because their name's been linked going into the year. But I think this is also really interesting because, number two, this really solidifies the fact that Liberty really believes that they can be able to compete for a national championship once the playoff opens to 12 teams. Yeah. Because the group of 5 will have a team in this thing. One of the biggest detriments to the Power 5 was that you didn't have a realistic chance. Outside of Cincinnati last year, who barely got in, you didn't have much of a chance to compete for a national championship. With the playoff now opening, there might be a spot for one, maybe 2 teams out of the group of 5 to get a championship bid. So if you take a team like Liberty, who's going into, keep in mind, the same conference as Jacksonville State is going into in 2023, now you have a team that is viable to tell recruits, hey, you can win a national championship here. Malik Willis has already showed us you could be a first-round draft pick here or a high draft pick here out of the NFL. Liberty's saying we offer all the same advantages as your low-level Power 5 teams do, and now they're showing it in the salaries of their coaches.
That's a good point because I don't think there's going to be many coaches in the Conference USA, which they'll be in with Jacksonville State next year, that are going to be making just under $5 million a year.
No,
that's going to put Liberty at the very top of that conference already.
Yes, I mean, and this is excluding a TV deal that we heard that is to come and others. So we know he's had success on the field, and it's the years there 8-5, 10-1, 8-5, and this year they're 7-1. They have multiple players to the NFL. He's made 3 bowl games. So yeah, the move to Conference USA, I'm sure was another one that really excited them. I'm sure it excites Jacksonville State. We've talked to AD Greg Seitz and the football coaches and basketball coaches and others that about the move to Conference USA. It's going to be really, really big. And Liberty right now is trying to put their foot forward as we are the forward-facing team of this conference. And once again, it's a conference. I know I said this about the Sun Belt yesterday. The Conference USA can be a conference that is one of the top teams out of the Power 5 in general, meaning you have a legitimate shot once this thing opens up to 12 teams to getting one of those spots. And so I think that Liberty's doing a good job of blurring those lines between where the top of the group of 5 is and where maybe your Colorados and your Purdues and Indianas are in the bottom part of the Power 5s. Yeah. I think those lines are blurred a lot more, and especially now with the transfer portal and being able to come transfer a year without sitting out. I think, these lines are being blurred in a lot more ways than they were maybe even 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think that is an excellent point there. But Hugh Freeze, big extension there with the Liberty Flames. There's some other notable games we want to get to that are coming up tomorrow. Ohio State at Penn State. That's the big noon kickoff there on Fox. Number 2 Ohio State going to Happy Valley Could this be a challenge for Ohio State?
I don't think so. I think that we saw last week with Michigan basically running the football down Penn State's throats. Ohio State, to me, is just so much better than all the other teams in that league, even a little inch above where Michigan is. And I think the gap where Michigan and Ohio State are is pretty big between them and Penn State. Now, Penn State will create a great environment. I just don't know if it's enough to tame the Buckeyes.
Yeah, good point there. Number 7, TCU at West Virginia. You got Notre Dame at Syracuse. And this is an interesting one, 11 a.m. on ABC. Syracuse got their first loss last week to Clemson. Notre Dame going to Syracuse. And is Notre Dame still the favorite?
No, Notre Dame is not the favorite, but they're a very, very, very small underdog.
Okay,
2 points, 2.5 points.
Wow.
Vegas is basically begging you to take Syracuse there. So even though they're not the favorite, they might be the right side.
Yeah. So that one may be you may want to check that out at 11 a.m. Oklahoma State at Kansas State. This is an interesting matchup here.
Yeah, it is, because Kansas State is the favorite in this matchup against number 9 Oklahoma State. Manhattan, Kansas is a really tough place to win. Really tough place to go get a W. But Chris Kleiman and his crew really love those upsets, and they'll have another opportunity there tomorrow.
You also got Michigan State at Michigan and Pitt at North Carolina. And I think the Tar Heels are just like a 3-point favorite.
Yeah, it's another situation, a lot like the Notre Dame-Syracuse game that we talked about. Very, very small favorite as Pitt goes to North Carolina in that matchup.
We have got the World Series beginning tonight. Astros, Phillies. And we're going to hear from the manager of the Phillies and Dusty Baker, a guy who I'm going to be cheering for in the World Series, and would love to see Dusty Baker be able to bring one home.
I saw a great piece yesterday talking about how all of baseball, there's a large portion of baseball rooting for Dusty Baker in this matchup. Even though people might not like the Houston Astros, they really like Dusty Baker. Even people on the Phillies that are like, hey, if we don't win this thing, we're happy for Dusty. Over 2,000 wins as a manager. He's managed over 3,800 games. He's looking for his first ring. He's one of the kind of the grandfathers of baseball, so to speak. And he talked about, what his role is, being able to manage a team that is once again here at the World Series level.
What would it mean to you to manage a World Series champion?
Well, that's why I'm here. That's why I glad that Jim Crane brought me back here, and also to a place that, because most places I've been, I've had to sort of rebuild the team, but this team was sort of built already, and I had to carry on and try to enhance what we already have here. And I don't know, I'm just a ball player that's trying to play ball and trying to win. I love to win. And I've always said if I win one, I win two. So you got to win one first, and then we'll work on number two at that time.
Dusty Baker there, and that's why he's there.
Yep.
Is to win a World Series, and he's sure going to try to manage that team to be able to do that.
Yeah, most certainly. And I think a lot of people, as we talked about earlier, are going to be rooting for Dusty, and he knows the situation. He's got the team that's undefeated so far in these playoffs, and 4 more wins, and he's got that.
And Justin Verlander is going for World Series number 1 himself, and one of the great pitchers in the game. He's going to be exciting to watch in this World Series as well.
Yeah, a lot like Dusty. It feels like a long career, a storied career that's missing one thing, and that's that championship ring. He has 244 wins on his career. He's 2 strikeouts away, which we think he'll get it in the World Series, from 3,200 strikeouts, over 3,100 innings pitched. But he talked about being able to try to solidify that first World Series victory.
I think Dusty and I both would like to check off, my first World Series win, his first World Series championship. I think, that'd be a wonderful thing for us to have on our career list. I think it's not my goal, though. My goal is not to go out there and win a baseball game. There's been games in the World Series that I don't deserve a win. There's been games that I thought I pitched well enough that we could get a win. It just didn't work out. It just, at this point in the season, personal goals like that just don't matter. Try to win the game however you can. I was one of the happiest people in the world. Game 1 against Seattle, when we won that game, I pitched like crap, but we won. Doesn't matter anymore. So it would be nice, though.
Justin Verlander there as him and Dusty Baker going for their first world championship. We got to jump to a break because we got to get our NFL picks in. We'll do that on the other side. Stick around here on WKXX Live.
B-Dubs Cocktails, Pretzel Knots.
Sports Station, Fox Sports 102.9.
We are back here on WKXX Live, Fox Sports 102.9. Chasey Gerhard here with you, finishing up this week. We are with you till 3 o'clock today as we'll turn it over to the press box, and we're going to go get ready for some football. We'll hear Hoax Bluff and Sardis coming up tonight at 6:30 here on Fox Sports 102.9. But it is time for our weekly NFL picks.
This pick week has been insane. I've just done the math on this, pulled up the spreadsheet, and we're weirdly as it is on to week 8 of the picks. But through week 7, we've picked exactly 100 games straight up. The way that this works, we pick all the games straight up after the Thursday games. We picked Sunday all the way through Monday night. And then we also pick our 3 favorite games against the spread. And then we compare them both. We picked 100 games, took the tie out of there. Through 100 games, you are 57-43, and I'm 53-47. So 4 games back. You went 9-4 last week and 5-8 overall. And another quasi note I just found: you have had a winning week every week since week 2. Wow. Haven't had a losing week since week 2. So if you want to, make a couple dollars, just listen up when James Chase picks. So our picks for this week. We got another nice little slate here. We will start with the London game on Sunday morning. Broncos and Jaguars. Jaguars a 2-point favorite in London.
Yeah, Denver's just been so up and down. I'm going to go with the Jags.
Yeah, I am too. I was almost about to bail on the Jags, but the Jags have been to London so many times, it feels like they're quasi-home. So I'm going to take it as a home game for them. Meanwhile, the Panthers at Atlanta Falcons. Falcons a 4.5-point favorite.
Give me the Falcons.
Yeah, I have to go with the Falcons as well. I mean, the Panthers looked good last week, but I'm gonna think I'll go with the Falcons as well. The Chicago Bears coming off the Monday night game at the Cowboys. Cowboys a 9.5-point favorite.
I'll take the Cowboys.
It's weird, but I think I'm gonna go with the Bears. It's a large number. 9.5 points for a team that just beat the Patriots on Monday night.
Yeah.
To win, the Miami Dolphins going to Detroit. The Lions are the Dolphins are a 3.5-point favorite.
I'll take the Lions.
I was thinking about going with the Lions, but I think I like the way the Dolphins are playing right now. I think I'll go with the away team. It's kind of scary there. The Arizona Cardinals at the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings a 3-point favorite.
Yeah, I'll take the Vikings.
I'm going to go with the Cardinals in this matchup. It's a dome game. I think that they'll be able to get it done there. Las Vegas Raiders at the New Orleans Saints. The Raiders are 1.5-point favorite.
Yeah, give me the Saints.
Saints at home. I usually like the points at home. I'm going to go with the Raiders here in this matchup, though. I'll go with the Raiders in this matchup. I'll go with the New England Patriots and the New York Jets. Jets haven't beat the Patriots in a long time. The Jets are at home, but the Patriots are a 2-point favorite.
I'm going to take the Jets. They're going to get it done.
Hey, I like it. I can't go against my boy Mac Jones. I'm going to go with the Patriots in that matchup. The Philadelphia Eagles hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers, Battle of Pennsylvania. Philly, an 11-point favorite.
Yeah, you got to love the way the Eagles are playing. Steelers, not so much. I'll take the Eagles.
Yeah, it's a large number to cover, but I like the Eagles to win the football game. On to the 3 o'clock win of the Tennessee Titans going to Houston to face the Texans. The Titans a slim 2-point favorite.
Yeah, I'll take the Titans.
I'm going to go with the Texans here. I'll just strike it up to one of those weird football weekends. The Washington Commanders at the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts a 3-point favorite.
I'll take Washington. Give me the Commanders.
I think I'm going to go with the Colts. New energy there. They benched Matt Ryan. I think I'll just go with the Colts here in this matchup. Meanwhile, the San Francisco 49ers at the L.A. Rams, the Battle of California.
Yeah, let's see.
And the 49ers are 1-point favorite.
I'll take the Rams.
I think I'm going to go with the Rams as well. Actually, you know what? I'm going to change my mind. I'm going with the 49ers, like Christian McCaffrey in the second week there. The Seattle Seahawks, a 3-point favorite, hosting the New York Giants. Battle of two teams that are kind of surprising.
Yeah, I'll take the Seahawks. I think Geno Smith's playing.
Yeah. I think I'll go with the Giants. I'll ride New York making the trip cross country. The Green Bay Packers at the Buffalo Bills. Bills, an 11-point favorite.
Yeah, hard to pick against them. I'll take the Bills.
Yeah, especially at home. I'm going with the Bills as well. Monday Night Football, the Bengals and the Browns, the Battle of Ohio. The Bengals, a 3-point favorite in Cleveland.
Yeah, I'll take the Bengals.
I think I'm going to go with the Browns there in that matchup. Just one of those weird games. So those are the games for the weekend and your favorites against the spread.
I'll go Lions, Saints, Jets.
I think I'm going to go Jaguars. I'll go with the Packers to cover that large number, and also go with the Steelers to cover that large number as well.
All right, there we go. That is our NFL picks. We'll see how we do. That is all the time we have for you today. Enjoy football tonight. Enjoy football all weekend. We'll have Hoax Bluff for you tonight. We'll have Jacksonville State for you tomorrow. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday.
The Press Box.